After studying this module, you shall be able to identify the concept and the levels of economic integration. You would be able to know the different process theories of economic integration, understand about the importance of these theories, differentiate between trade creation and trade diversion effects, understand the differences between regionalism and multilateralism, comprehend the structure and functioning of EC and NAFTA, and finally understand the overall concept of regional economic cooperation. Regional integration may be defined as a process where two or more nations agree to cooperate and work closely towards achieving peace, stability, economic growth, trade and wealth. Usually, integration involves one or more written agreements that describe the areas of cooperation in detail, as well as some coordinating bodies representing the involved countries. This cooperation usually begins with some agreement about economic integration, and as it continues, it moves towards political integration. So, if we were to understand the notion of economic integration and what we generally call regional economic cooperation, then let us imagine a integration being measured on a scale of 0 to 10. So, when the number is 0, it represents no integration amongst the concerned countries, and when it is the number is 10, it represents complete integration amongst all the countries. This means that the integrating states would actually become a new country, a new entity, in other words, when total integration takes place. Considering this state, no integration would be a level when there is no such policy of integrating the states has been implemented. When the number is 0, it means that there is no economic integration. When the number is 5, it means that there is a single market like the European Common Market, and when the number is 10, it implies that there is total economic integration, which actually amounts to and leads to political integration. Economic integration forms the initial stage of regional integration. It is a process by which different countries agree to remove tariff barriers amongst themselves. Trade barriers can be tariff barriers in the form of taxes imposed on imports by a particular country, or it could be non-tariff barriers which are in the form of quotas, which limit the amount of a product that can be imported. It could be also other border restrictions on movement of people and so on. Typology of economic integration can be understood as follows. The classical schema of economic integration ranks integration arrangements according to the depth of integration along with a continuum starting with the PTA or the preferential trade area and evolving through the next stage, which is free trade area FTA, the customs union, the common market, and then the economic union, and then we have the monetary union, ultimately with the aim to achieve a total economic integration. Figure shows the typology. As you would notice that we start with PTA, move on to FTA, customs union, common market, economic union and political union. The preferential trade area is the area in which countries lower their tariffs on trade with each other while retaining the autonomy in settling the tariffs on the trade with third party countries. That is, if there could be an agreement between USA and Canada, as was the case before NAFTA. Now, the free trade area is an area in which the members eliminate the tariffs among themselves, but keep their own tariffs against the rest of the world. Now, these are examples of EU, CEE, association agreements, NAFTA, CIFTA and ANZR and so on. A customs union eliminates the tariffs amongst themselves and adopts a common tariff against the rest of the world. Mercosur and Andean Pact, the American Common Market and so on are examples of a customs union. Then comes the next stage, which is the common market. Members eliminate tariffs amongst themselves, adopt a common external tariff and remove impediments not only to trade but to all other factors of production amongst the member countries. This is the case with the European Economic Community. Then we have the economic union. The members of an economic union move beyond the common market to coordinate and harmonize economic policies. The European Union is another or one of the prime examples of such an economic union. The economic union would also often consist of a monetary union where there is a common currency area. Then finally, the highest stage of economic integration or regional economic cooperation would be the political union. Here the members share a common currency, a common monetary policy, and a political union is often seen as the ultimate stage of integration, and it involves the integration of the legislative as well as the judiciary processes. The Eurozone countries of the European Union CFA zone is one such prime example. Now let us consider the theory behind economic integration. The theory is known as the theory of customs union. The basic model of economic integration is the theory of customs union, which was originally supposed to be a theory of economic integration that would be applicable ultimately to the whole world. The theory of market integration was developed in the beginning of the 1950s, although at that time it was called the customs union theory. The propounders of this theory were mainly Jacob Weiner, Morris Bay and Herbert Grisch. All the published works that tried to analyze the impacts of the establishment of a customs union on the world welfare, but Jacob Weiner is usually recognized as the father of the customs union theory. Weiner showed in his book the theory centered around the two concepts. One is known as trade creation and the other is known as trade diversion. The term may cause some confusion because actually trade within a customs union increases regardless of whether there is an abolition of internal tariffs and leads to the both trade creation as well as trade diversion. Instead, the difference between the two situations is measured by the welfare gains and the losses resulting from the creation of a customs union. According to Weiner, the participating countries and the world at large benefit from a customs union if the trade creating forces are predominant, but both the participating countries as well as the world at large suffer if the trade diverting forces are predominant. To understand what Weiner meant by the two terms trade creation and trade diversion, it is possible to use the work of Bela Balassa, who took the ideas of Weiner one step further. Under the assumptions of pure competition, constant costs and zero transportation cost, prices of any commodity in the world market would be equal to the cost of production in the lowest country. Those countries whose cost of production are higher than the sum of their tariff and the world market price will not produce the commodity domestically. Those countries which do not produce the commodity domestically import it from the lowest cost producer according to Balassa. Under these assumptions, it is possible to distinguish 5 separate cases of what can happen when two countries A and B form a customs union and exclude the third country C from it. You can see in figure that there is a plus sign between A and B and there is an outward arrow which actually points that country C has been excluded. Both the participating countries produce the commodity prior to the formation of the customs union, and the union includes the lowest cost producer. After the union is established, the inefficient producer will cease to produce this commodity and the entire demand will be satisfied through importation from some other country. Both the countries produce the commodity in question under protection and the union does not include the lowest cost producer. The removal of the tariff between the participating countries will again create a new trade because the participating countries can now benefit from the cost differences which was previously prevented by the tariff. Third, country B is the lowest cost producer. A does not produce the commodity under protection. Nothing changes when the customs union is formed. Now, fourthly, country B produces the commodity under protection while country A imports it from country C, the lowest cost source. The formation of a customs union removes A's entire import demand from the lowest cost producer C to B. If production costs in B are less than the sum of the tariff and the cost of production in C. Fifthly, neither A nor B produce the commodity under protection. Nothing changes when the customs union is formed. These were some of the different alternatives that were discussed by Balassa in 1962. The effect of a customs union can be analyzed by using trade creation and trade diversion. Let us now look at trade creation and trade diversion. Let us now look at these two concepts. Trade creation refers to a shift from the consumption of the high cost domestic products in favor of lower cost products of a partner country. It should be noted here that in the theory of the effects of creation of a free trade area are identical to this model only if the participating countries A and B have similar external tariffs. The practice that FTA follows has similar effects as a customs union because after the creation of an FTA, the commodity imported from C will enter the free trade area in that country which has the lowest external tariff. Trade diversion refers to the shift in the source of imports from the lower cost external source to the higher cost partner source. It is obvious why Weiner considered the trade creation to be favorable for welfare, whereas trade diversion to be detrimental to welfare, even if in both the cases the volume of trade within the union increases. At the same time, other industries will benefit from trade creation and new production is established within the customs union. On the other hand, if there is a trade diversionary situation, the positive production effects are likely to be smaller, and simultaneously, as a result of trade diversion, previously lower cost products from non-members are replaced by higher cost products from member states. So, in the net, whether the world at large would benefit or not would depend upon the net of trade creation and trade diversion. If trade creation exceeds trade diversion, only then can we say that the global welfare would increase due to the formation of a customs union. Now let us look at two notions. One is regionalism and the other is multilateralism. Regionalism in international trade policy is used to refer to the economic integration between two or more countries based on a formal agreement. The most common definition of a regional free trade agreement is an agreement amongst countries within a specific geographic region. Its objectives are to eliminate barriers to trade and facilitate the cross-border movements of goods and services amongst the signatory countries. The concept regional refers to a limited number of countries and is used to set apart these countries from multilateral liberalization, which includes all the member states of WTO. At the same time, this also means non-members of the agreement are placed at a disadvantage with respect to the members. According to Inter-American Development Bank, regional trade agreements regulate more than one half of the global trade. Some famous regional agreements include European Common Market, the North American Free Trade Agreement NAFTA, and these are some of the leading examples, while there are hundreds of other such regional integration examples. Some of them are small, some of them are large. Now let us look at multilateralism. Multilateral agreement is defined as a binding agreement between three or more parties concerning the terms of a specific circumstance. Multilateral agreements can occur between three individuals or agencies. However, the most common use of the term multilateral agreements between several are referring to such agreements which are between several countries. Multilateral agreements are often the result of recognition of common ground between the various parties involved concerning the issue at hand. They are usually intended to lower tariff barriers between participating countries as mentioned before, and as a consequence increase the degree of economic integration between the participants. Multilateral trade agreements are considered the most effective way for liberalizing trade in an independent global economy. Several countries can enter into a multilateral agreement, which is generally complex in structure. Additionally, multilateralism is sometimes referred to as a process by which countries solve problems in an interactive and cooperative fashion. Now, let us look at the structure and functioning of two of the most prominent economic integration entities. One is the European Community and the other is NAFTA. First of all, let us take up the EC. The European Community is an international organization formed from the consolidation of three Western European treaties: the European Economic Community, the European Coal and Steel Community, and the European Atomic Energy Community. EC is an economic and political organization of European countries formed after World War II to reduce trade barriers and increase cooperation amongst its members. The treaty establishing the European Community was ratified in 1965 and took effect in 1967. The Kingdom of Ireland and Denmark joined in 1973. Greece joined in 1981. Spain and Portugal joined in 1986. European Community, previously known as EEC, European Economic Community, by name of was named as the Common Market and was primarily designed to integrate the economies of Europe. In 1993, three communities were incorporated under the EU. The EC or the Common Market then became the principal component of the EU. It remained such till 2009 when EU legally replaced the EC with its institutional successor. The former EC or EEC was designed to create a common market amongst its members through the elimination of most trade barriers and the establishment of a common external trade policy. The treaty also provided for a common agricultural policy which was established in 1962 to protect EEC farmers from agricultural imports. The first reduction in EEC internal tariffs was implemented in 1959, and by July 1968 all the internal tariffs had been removed. Between 1958 and in 1968, trade amongst the EEC members multiplied many times in value. The members committed themselves to remove all remaining barriers to a common market by 1992. The Act also gave the EEC a formal control of communities' policies on environment, research and technology, education, health, consumer protection and several other areas. NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. The North American Free Trade Agreement signed by Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, the Mexican President Carlos Salinas and the US President George Bush came into effect on 1st of January 1994, creating one of the world's largest free trade zones and laying the foundation for strong economic growth and rising prosperity in Canada, US and Mexico. Since then, NAFTA has demonstrated how free trade increases with wealth, competitiveness, delivering real benefits to families, to farmers, to workers, manufacturers and consumers and so on. All on the NAFTA between United States, Canada and Mexico entered into such an agreement, and the remaining duties and quantitative restrictions were removed on 1st of January 2008. NAFTA created the world's largest free trade area, which now links 450 million people, producing $17 trillion worth of goods and services. NAFTA's governance structure is minimal and is centered on two institutions, the Free Trade Commission and the Secretariat, and the structure of the functioning is explained below. We first of all consider the Free Trade Commission. The Free Trade Commission is the principal body of NAFTA which oversees NAFTA's performance and evolution. It is responsible for dispute settlement and is composed of US Trade Representative, the Canadian Minister for International Trade and the Mexican Secretary for Commerce and Industrial Development. The day-to-day work of FTC is carried out by expert groups and committees. This authority was laid out in Article 2001-2 of NAFTA, which gave express powers to the FTC to oversee, resolve and supervise the work of all committees and working groups. The powers of the FTC can be characterized as technical, specific and obligatory. The Secretariat serves as an administrator for the FTC and is organized on a national basis, with each member responsible for supporting its own staff. Operationally, the Secretariat assists the free trade, the FTC, along with the dispute settlement panel, the committees and the working groups. The Secretariat is located in separate national offices in Mexico City, Ottawa and Washington. This has the real power of its own through the delegation from FTC. Instead, it takes care of the day-to-day affairs that are prescribed under Article 2002. The national secretaries are also complemented by the NAFTA coordinating secretariat based in Mexico. The Trilateral Secretariat was created on 14th of January 1995. The main purpose of the Central Secretariat is to help administer labor and environmental issues that fall under the NAFTA. In reality, due to the limited enforceability and the lax regulation, this body has not been very active and is unequal in power to the investment and free trade lobbies. Going forward, US domestic opposition to NAFTA is great amongst the environmental and labor communities, and it has led to many a clash of interest. Regional economic cooperation. One of the most important developments in the world trade system in the 90s has been the emergence of regional economic cooperation. In the end of the Cold War, there were reduced political tensions between countries in Asia, as well as the globalization of production processes and increasing vertical integration took place after the end of the Cold War. Cities like Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore have been lifting their populations out of poverty through a process of cooperative arrangements with the neighboring countries. Transnational economic zones have utilized the different endowments of various countries in East Asia, exploiting the cooperative trade and development opportunities. The transfer of technology and manufacturing between the nations has allowed them to develop sequentially. Information technology has improved linkages between economies and put remote regions in contact with the world. The private sector provides for capital for investment, the public sector provides the infrastructure, fiscal incentives and the administrative framework are responsible for attracting industry. Regional cooperation is now considered the means of enhancing economic development and providing economic security within the regions. Trade amongst the ASEAN members accounted for more than 23% of all trade by the members since 1994, topping that of any group's major trading partners. The Southern Growth Triangle, known as Sijori, Singapore, Johor State of Malaysia and Riau Province of Indonesia, was formed in 1989 and covers a population of 6 million people. Attracted $10 billion in private sector investments during the first 5 years of its existence. Such regional economic cooperation has occurred in other Asian regions as well, spurring economic development. Growth triangles are expected to be continued driving force for the growth of Asian economies throughout the 90s. 4 growth triangles have been established since 89 involving parts of 11 countries. As shown below in the map, there are currently 8 growth polygons in East and Southeast Asia, with additional triangles being planned in the future. as you will see, there is a concentration of these areas in the South China Sea and surrounding certain parts of Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and the South China Sea, the Mekong Delta, Vietnam and Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia. Here we have something called the northern growth triangle, the southern growth triangle, and so on. So you could see over here there is also the East ASEAN growth area. So this is what we can see has been the impact of the ASEAN and the regional economic cooperation in the Southeast Asian region, and you would notice that there is a subtle difference between the three cases that we have studied. On the one hand, we have studied the traditional European Union, we have studied NAFTA, which is of recent origin but it is a large coalition, and then we have studied the coalition amongst countries which have got a lot of variation amongst each other, and the regional economic cooperation goes beyond trade, it goes to various other areas of cooperation. Now let us summarize what we have studied. In this module we have studied the following aspects of regional economic integration. First of all, we have discussed the concept of regional economic integration or economic integration at different levels, and we have shown how there are different levels of economic integration that exist, as we have already discussed, things like free trade area and customs union and so on. We have learned about different process theories of economic integration. Further, we have tried to develop an understanding about the importance of these theories. In what ways do they affect the regions? That is a major question of concern. The effects of economic integration are normally, customs union are normally classified as trade creation and trade diversion. The former improves the economic welfare while the latter reduces economic welfare. We have followed the difference between regionalism and multilateralism. We have also seen the structure and functioning of the European community and the NAFTA, and finally we have studied the meaning and evolution of regional economic cooperation in Southeast Asia.